Welcome to the Great Basin Fire Potential Briefing for Sunday, June 21st. Over the next several days, we will see hot and dry conditions with some breezy winds, especially the first part of the week over the southern half of the Great Basin and in parts of Idaho, with just a few remaining storms today. Otherwise, we will see another increase in mixed wet and dry thunderstorms for the southern and eastern area of the Great Basin, and then possibly an increase in winds later this weekend. Otherwise, fire danger continues to increase, especially across the southern eastern half of the region. So for today, we will see some isolated thunderstorms over parts of Nevada, which will be a mix of wet and dry, and also up into eastern Idaho and Wyoming, but certainly much less coverage than we've seen in recent days. Otherwise, some breezy winds remain in Idaho and eastern Utah, although most of those gusts will be in the 20s. As we move through Monday and Tuesday, much warmer and drier conditions, along with an increase in breezy winds, especially in the south, is expected. Over the last 24 hours, we saw quite a bit of lightning up north. These areas in the central Idaho mountains and in the northern Sawtooth did see some wetting rains, with some areas above a third or a half inch, but many areas it was definitely hit or miss with precipitation, and most areas seeing below a tenth of an inch, although there were some wetter storms. Over the last 7 days, the only precipitation really we've seen has been over the western side of the Great Basin, and then obviously up north, which is not accounted for in this image, and then some of the earlier thunderstorms down south. Otherwise, still very dry conditions across the region. Great Basin fire activity continues to be light to moderate. We did see over 9,000 acres of new fires, with over 7,000 acres of growth on our large fires, and you can see obviously quite a bit of fire activity going on across the Great Basin. Fire danger continues to rise. Most areas over Utah and into southern eastern Nevada are above the 90th percentile, with some above the 97th percentile, especially in the south. And this is obviously way above normal and near records in some areas. We did see a slight decrease in fire danger over western areas, but this was just in areas that saw some of the rainfall, which definitely was not widespread across western Nevada. So we will see a lot of these areas in the west and up north quickly rebound after any precipitation. Looking at the next few days, we will see high pressure building generally along the west coast, but moving into the Great Basin over the next couple of days, as we see an area of low pressure skirt the northern Rockies today and moving into the northern plains tomorrow and Tuesday. This will continue to generate some isolated thunderstorm activity with instability from Nevada up into Idaho, but again, very isolated storms today with drier conditions Monday and Tuesday. We have no high risk across the region, but a lot of moderate risk of large fire just with the heat, dryness, and continued increasing fire danger, so we will likely see growth on our large fires because of those conditions. Looking at the wind conditions and relative humidity, you can see today any of the breezy winds generally will be with gusts in the low to mid 20s. We will see a gradual increase in winds Monday and Tuesday, both in Idaho and over southern areas, especially on Tuesday in the south. And this will be accompanied by single-digit relative humidity and very poor overnight recoveries. Looking at precipitation, again, any thunderstorms we see today will be generally tied to the higher elevations and very isolated, and then those drier conditions going into the early part of the week. As we move into Wednesday through Friday, this is where conditions really start to change yet again. We will have some moisture moving up from the south, from Arizona, so we will see an increase in thunderstorms over southern and eastern areas going into Wednesday and Thursday. So we do have high risk for that lightning. This lightning could be a little bit more widespread, so we are looking at some higher risk further north, and this lightning will be a mix of wet and dry, so again, expecting new ignitions along with gusty outflow winds that will impact ongoing incidents. As we move into later in the week, we don't have any high risk yet, but we are looking for possibly an increase in winds Friday and Saturday across really any area of the Great Basin. So that'll be something we'll be watching as this next area of low pressure moves into the Pacific Northwest. This also could bring thunderstorms back into Idaho, so something to watch for many areas later in the week. Looking at some of the details with the winds and relative humidity, you can see generally breezy winds going through Wednesday and Thursday, but Friday is really the day that we could start to see that increase in winds along with continued single digit to teens relative humidity. We will see some upticks in relative humidity in the south and in the mountains of Utah as we go from mid to late week as those thunderstorms increase. But again, we are expecting those to be a mix of wet and dry. And for the precipitation, you can see that increase in moisture going through Wednesday and Thursday, maybe lingering on Friday. So the main impacts or threats to these thunderstorms will be parts of southern Nevada, the Arizona Strip, and into Utah. And then we'll be watching Idaho for later in the week. As a recap, our 7-day significant fire potential outlook, again, warm and dry conditions continue with breezy winds, so a lot of moderate risk of large fire going through the early part of the week, with an increase due to lightning over southern areas as we move through Wednesday and Thursday, and again, still watching Friday and Saturday for that increase in winds. 6 to 10 day outlook shows generally warm temperatures, possibly getting pushed a little bit further south as we see troughs move into the north. So could see some cooler temperatures for the north with some precipitation as we get later in the month, but we'll see how this plays out. That concludes our webcast for today. Check back tomorrow for the latest updates.